virtual quorum to include our two physically present. Good evening. This is the October 9th, 2023 meeting of the Upper Darby Township Planning Commission. Calling us to order at about 7:06. Visual roll call. Jeff Broken is absent. Others are present either here or via virtual Zoom link. You have the minutes from last month's meeting. Does anybody have any additions, corrections, changes to the meeting minutes?
None.
Nope. Nope. Motion to approve?
Approve.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so tonight, we don't have communications and bills or a land development plan to review, so we can go right to zoning, and we can discuss the first iteration here of a smoke shop draft ordinance that everybody's really been looking forward to. And so Josh will tell us about things that we're proposing to strike, things we're proposing to add, clarifications to make. And you've got that in your packets on the table in front of you. So, Josh?
And afterwards, can he, just for the record, go through the procedurally what would be the next steps?
Sure.
Kind of work?
Yeah. Yeah, since this is the very first time, how we're going to proceed with getting this all the way to council.
Yeah, so I think for now, this is just going to be more of, right, us drafting something more on the planning side, less on the review side. So we'll draft this with, your recommendations. Planning department has been working on it for the last couple months. And we'll essentially, right, take this with your recommendations, take it to, right, the administration and get their feedback and get the feedback, right, from our solicitors and kind of go from there into an official Act 247, once this gets put into more of an ordinance format. And then from there, it will, right, from official Act 247 status, it will come back to you guys, but this time more as review and less as a brainstorming. This is where you'd make an actual recommendation to council. This will, right, go on another parallel review to the County Planning Commission as well, where they'll vote on a recommendation. Both those recommendations, right, will come back and then go to council for final approval. And that's kind of the timeline that we're looking at.
So the county part is after we make the official recommendation to move forward?
It's parallel.
Okay.
So
But after the Act 247?
after the Act 247 submitted, that's like the beginning step. Yeah, so I guess I just want to start by going over the existing ordinance, 3106. So I'm going to I can share my screen and we can talk about that. And then we'll kind of go into the changes. So this ordinance was passed, I believe, 1st of December, 2021. Ordinance 3106. Essentially, there's this first part about barbershops, beauty salons, and nail salons. We're going to skip that for now, and then go right into section 2, which essentially gives us our first definition. It gives us a definition of hookah bar, and it gives us a definition of smoke shop and smoking parlor. That's pretty much what it is. Under that definition, there are 3 subsections, A, B, and C, which give additional requirements that pertain to any smoke shop and any smoking parlor. I'm not sure if those actually pertain to the hookah bars as well, because it's not necessarily under that. Possible clarification we maybe want in the future. But some, the definition, right, is doing what it's trying to do, is define what a smoke shop is. And in this case, right, it's a retail sale, primarily engaged in marketing or selling tobacco products, et cetera. We give 2 ways to determine if it's a smoke shop in this ordinance. a retail sales or wholesale establishments which maintains 20% or more of its total merchandise as tobacco, tobacco products, or accessories. Or, and if you kind of go down closer to the bottom, it's also for the purpose of this chapter, a retail or wholesale establishments which holds itself out as or otherwise promotes or markets itself as a tobacco store, smoke shop, vape shop, and cigar shop. So if they call themselves a smoke shop, then they would also, right, be fit into this column. So essentially, those are the two criteria for determining if it's a smoke shop, right? Is it called a smoke shop, and does 20% of the total merchandise equal, tobacco, tobacco products, accessory? Well, in theory, great. What we found is, in terms of practical enforcement, it has been difficult and actually nearly impossible to enforce the 20%, because that would, mean that we're counting 20% of the total merchandise of a store, which isn't something we have the time or resources to do for every convenience store, and regularly either.
Excuse me, my copy has that slashed out, and it has 75 square feet or 5%.
So yeah, I'm actually just going over right now the existing,
Oh, okay.
and that's why it's slashed out, because it's no good to me, in my head. So we have our definitions, right? How we define it, and then the rest of the definition is pretty much just a whole bunch of things that it could be. The three subsections A, B, and C under, right, just say each store should be located no closer than 500 feet from each other. There shall be one off-street parking space per 200 square feet of gross floor area and or fraction thereof, so there must be parking for it, and there shall be adequate ventilation for occupied spaces. I think this is interpreted more for the actual smoking parlors, right? If there's like a cigar lounge or something. Again, not necessarily sure this relates to the hookah bar because it's not under it, but it would be at least to make sure that there's proper ventilation and make sure it's safe and healthy. So directly under that is when we get into, right, so we know what it is. The next session is discussing, well, where can it be? And in this case, right, section B pretty much says, all the following sections pretty much say relatively the same thing. And they say that in a C1, C2, C3, and C4 district, that smoke shops are allowed by special exception. So as a reminder, special exception, right, aren't very special and aren't exceptions, right? They are simply making sure that they come to the zoning hearing board and they meet all of the requirements that are listed as special exception. As long as they can prove that they meet all those requirements, it's essentially a permitted use.
And Josh, does the special exception go with the property or with the owner? So if the property changes hands, does it remain special exception?
Yeah, it would go with the property,
Okay.
just like all uses. So one smoke shop would close and another smoke shop could open, right? But say they wanted to expand or, right, say it goes away for a year, then it
Then
might
they
be
have to
open
redo
to
it, right.
reapplying.
They switch to selling shoes for a year or two and they want to switch
Exactly.
back, they got to come back.
Or it's abandoned for a year.
Right. Okay.
And in that case, they would have to prove to the zoning hearing board that it wasn't abandoned. Under each of these sections, there are three other, there are other, it's more than three. There's another A, B, and C of essentially requirements for each one. So in this case, right, in the C1, the hours of operation that a smoke shop can have. Section 2, no alcoholic beverages, and Section 3, if it's within 300 feet of residential zone property, it must be a planted buffer, privacy fence, or some other barrier. This is roughly the same for all of them. The only thing that I think changes are the hour requirements. In the downtown, they can be open later. But that, I think, is the biggest.
Where are you?
Still going over the old ordinance.
No, I know that, but you're looking at the C3 requirements, right? Or that's what you're talking, the requirements right now?
It's C1, C2, C3 are all pretty much the same. Right, they say you have to be open a certain amount of hours, they say you can't have alcohol, and they say if you're within 300. They're slightly different for each, right, in the C3, you can be open later than if you're in the C1. But besides that, it's pretty much the same.
Could you quickly give us definition C1, C2, C3, C4?
Sure. So C1 is your kind of lowest intensity commercial district. So this is supposed to be your residential neighborhood commercial district. So a lot of these are along kind of our big corridors, and I can actually use the map to kind of describe this best. Share screen. Bear with me for a second. Okay, so right here's the Upper Darby Township zoning map. We got to go in one more. So right, C1 are kind of our long corridors here. You see Westchester Pike, right, Garrett Road, a good portion of it, good portion of State Road. Pieces of Township Line Road, pieces of Vermont. Again, usually neighboring residential homes, and supposed to be our lowest intensity, has the least amount of uses for any commercial district. Then you go up to your C2 districts. Those are things like the Bond Shopping Center, or right, the Barclay Square Shopping Center, areas of that nature. Again, your intensity is increasing a little bit more. These also include places like gas stations, automobile shops, and things like that. Definitely a lot less C2, right? You have all of Drexel Line Shopping Center over here and all of Pilgrim Garden Shopping Center up there. So certainly less, it's much more concentrated. They're usually centered in that, whatever that shopping center is. Next, we have C3, right, which is our downtown. That's shown here in light orange. And right, this you can see is a good pieces of Westchester Pike, the area around the municipality building, 5 Points, 69th Street, and some of Market Street. And then the last is C4, which is our highest intensity zoning district. And that is the area that's reserved for manufacturing, and pretty much all other uses. And that's a big area up here for 69th Street, and also down here in the Fernwood section by the railway, and then also a small piece over here. All right, and so that's pretty much the difference between the zones. Does that make sense, or do we need any clarifications on the different zones?
No, that makes sense. That's good.
Yeah.
Because I think it helps us, especially as we're looking at a smoke shop, to understand the different commercial districts in how close they are to residential areas. So that was a great way for you to frame it.
Good. All right, let's go back to the existing code. I guess that's really it. Right, the rest of the code is essentially just that, right? And those three requirements underneath, including hookah bars. But we're really, I know, focused on smoke shops, not hookah bars. So, and hookah bars, I believe, are only allowed in the C3, C4. So, all right, let's go over the changes. Let me just open that up. If I can find it. All right, so I actually want to, all right, so if we start with the handout that I have, just in general, right, everything that is shown in red, right, is being added. Everything that is strike through is recommended to be removed. So I realize now that I just gave the section headers.
Can you move your microphone away from the computer a little bit? Away.
Okay. So my first recommendations are, right, to remove section 550-21C5 and 550-23C4B. And essentially, those are removing it from the C1 zoning district and the C3 zoning district. Right now, there's special exceptions, right, in all four. My recommendation would be for them to be prohibited in the C1 and the C3. My reasoning behind this is because, right, if we're looking at that map, the C1 is, right, one, supposed to be our lowest intensity. Two, it's supposed to be things that are near, neighborhoods and schools and things like that. So I don't think it's a good fit for our low intensity, neighborhood commercial areas. And then the reason I'd want it to be moved out of C3 is that's, right, some of our highest intensity areas. And don't think that is the element you want when trying to rebuild and build a downtown. Of course, that's up right to the discussion of the board.
So what you just said, are you referring to the smoking parlors or the smoking shops? Because I don't see those as the same thing or the same intensity of use. Or are you
Right.
referring to both?
So I guess it would be, the way it's written right now, both. Obviously, something we could change. It does not include hookah bars, though. Hookah bars would still be permitted in the C3, C4.
You mean C1, C3?
Hookah bars aren't permitted right now in the C1.
Okay, but what you were just referring to was removing the uses from C1 and C3, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that would be applicable to smoke shops and smoking parlors.
They are condensed into one definition in this current ordinance.
And C3 is 69th Street, right?
C3 is 69th Street and our downtown area in general. It's 69th Street, pieces of Market Street, and, right, this whole area, right, would also be considered downtown, and actually Market all the way down into Philly.
Yeah, I call that, whatever, it's my bad. But I'm not incorrect, John, I should say. So.
Can you use the mic, please?
Is where I think it would be.
Are you using your mic, Jim?
I mean, crazy. I would think 69th Street is a place that would make more sense to have them.
I think if you look at 69th Street, the future of what 69th Street could be with better streetscape, outdoor seating, take a look at the Main Street of Media or Westchester or something like that. You tend to be looking at more typical shopping, retail, food type coffee shop establishments, maybe some small stage entertainment as opposed to running in and out type convenience store.
Are there any in 69th Street now?
There are many on and along that area.
I can't, I believe you, but I just haven't seen them. I see them more in Westchester Pike and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
noticed them. My
And
neighborhood.
I think if we think about what, as a town, what do we want to promote on 69th Street? If we'd like to promote more.
I'm not trying to promote them. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to say
No,
where.
but I mean that
where-
what would happen, I mean, if I were a person perhaps looking to open a restaurant, I might not be happy if I were flanked by smoke shops.
Right. Well, you can't be flanked because they'd have to be spaced
Well,
apart.
right, but
I'm just saying, if we don't give them some space, then they're going to just lie and try to finagle other spaces. That's all then.
so if that gives us C2 and C4, the C2s were
C2s are primarily shopping centers.
shopping centers. with
So they're
plenty of
already-
Parking,
there's plenty of parking. They're also kind of contained within themselves, so they're less intrusive to the neighbors. It's easier to have police presence in one location,
I think
right?
of shopping plazas too as places that have adequate traffic control, you know, as far as cars coming and going.
Oh, I think there makes
Yeah.
sense. I don't think they're ever gonna get one in Drexline, Bond, or any of the other shopping centers.
Yeah, I see, I
Barclay
guess,
maybe.
I think part of my issue was like, all right, so there's the ideal that we're kind of talking about, and then there's like the sort of the pragmatic side of it, right? Like, so just like the operation of these types of businesses and sort of where they traditionally kind of end up, no matter what the neighborhood is, more along the places like what you're talking about on Westchester Pike. That seems like it's closer to residential, but it's also Westchester Pike versus 69th Street downtown area. I think personally, I would prefer them there than at 69th Street or anywhere like that, where there's more foot traffic and there's less foot traffic on Westchester Pike. But the reality of like the shopping centers is that, like you said, most of those, I think, shopping center owners, I don't think would rent, because I don't think the rent that they would need, these kind of businesses can make, as opposed to some more like a supermarket or a pet store or something, like they can just pay higher rents. I don't think they're actually going to go to these type of locations if that's the only option that we give them legally. And I think what's going to happen if we restrict it to that realistically is what Jim is saying, is that they're just going to populate other places that we kind of don't want them to. I mean, I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around that being better than something like Westchester Pike. Maybe I'm harping on the Westchester Pike part of it, but that was the example we were provided for C1.
Mhm.
But to me, that seems like a better location for them than the things that we want to have foot traffic. You know what I mean? Because if we're being honest, there's not really foot traffic on Westchester Pike. And so everything we're talking about, coffee shops, outdoor seating, that kind of stuff, that doesn't really happen on like Westchester Pike or places like that. That happens on
Well, and
the C3 downtown area. Really.
And so maybe Westchester Pike pops into your head first on C1, and then in my mind, C1 Garrett Road pops in first, which is not at all like Westchester Pike, much smaller road, much, much more residential.
More
But yet,
walkers. There's more walkers on
many,
Garrett than
many more
Westchester.
walkers, right, on Garrett. Even Long Lane, like even if you leave here and go down, is Long Lane a C1?
Here, I'll put the map back up.
I mean, Long Lane is chock full of little daycare centers. I know because everybody's double parks at the end of the day to pick up their kids and blocks it.
The majority of Long Lane is, here, we'll kind of go back to it.
Like Long Lane from here down to Marshall is tight, and daycare centers and the roti shop and.
So, right, here's all of Long Lane. Here, right, is a significant portion of Garrett Road going to going to the Barclay Square Shopping Center. Here, the significant portions of Marshall Road.
And where is C4 again?
C4s are,
The meat packing plant, the Market Street.
right, so there's, C4 is this whole area. I can do a satellite view, if that would make it easier.
I just wasn't sure what color it was.
It's brown. So it's right, this piece, the most of the Fernwood section, right? You've got the Giant here, you've got the railroad going through, and then you've got kind of more industrial and commercial uses on either side. Too far. Right, you've got the one, I think it's Accurate Recycling's down here. And then you also, right, I know there's a piece over, this is a piece over here, that's C4, and then there's a big block down here, as well as the whole 69th Street Transportation Terminal, but that's probably not going to be owned by anybody else but SEPTA for the foreseeable future, so it's there, but, you know. it's not
So,
necessarily
so right
available.
now, generally speaking, most of them are being opened in what district, would you say? Is it
I'd say
C1?
without a doubt, the C1 has the most of them,
Yeah,
which is our
I
lowest
think there's a
intensity.
reason for that. And I don't know, we might be creating something.
I think I do see them popping up in C1s, and I think because, and I'm thinking of the C1s, like the little teeny section on State Road where Drexel Hill, is it Drexel, no, Drexel Hill Pizza? What's the pizza on the corner? Odyssey, Drexel?
Odyssey.
Odyssey, and the Peruvian place. Like,
Right, those are
these are
C1.
little C1 sections that maybe only have 4 storefronts, and boom, there's a smoke shop is one of them. Now, the corner of, down by Garrett, there's only, from the eyewear guy to the empty pharmacy, Marathon Pizza, and boom, now there's no smoke shop in there. It's like every little four-store storefront one's popping into.
Right. I'd also
And those are
take,
the little C1s as opposed, so is kind of, because I kind of agree with Steve that Westchester Pike seems like a obvious spot for it, but that's very different than those 2 little blocks of State Road where
Or
people are,
think of the whole Fernwood.
houses right up to the back of the pizza place and
But who patronizes these things? It's people don't drive from other neighborhoods
Yes, they
to
do.
come
yes, they
to.
do, yeah.
I mean,
think
but
they
if
are.
you ask the business owners, I think the higher percentage of their customers are people who live close. It's not, I mean, I think that's kind of like business 101. They're not going to put their business far away from where most of their customers are going to be. And so it's kind of like, I think we're speaking about this in the abstract, but in reality, I think there's a reason they're going in C1s, right? I don't think it's like
I think
random
part
that
of it,
they're all going in C1s that you're describing.
I think it's just the rents are so cheap there.
And there's a lot of C1
And there's a lot of
comparatively.
teeny tiny little C1 spots such that the supply is causing the rents to be low.
And I don't really know the products that they're selling in the markets and that, but I go to the dry cleaner and there's one a couple doors down, and the lady has been talking to the guy, and some of the people coming there, because he'll have something, and the friends tell the other friends that whatever he is selling, this special something, I don't know what it is, some thing in a can that they vape. There's like, they track the blueberry one and the green one and the purple, and they tell each other, oh, you can get it here, and they'll come from Ridley and West Philadelphia and whatever. I mean, the guy in my corner has been robbed twice, and both times, he said that people were not from around here. I'm just saying, that's what I've been told. I don't know why.
There does seem to be a policing issue as well associated with them. There's also a lot of the state gambling as well. So that is a popular late night destination, which is
What do you mean?
like the state gambling machines, like the amusement machines,
Are they in these vape shops?
almost always. And it's creating a lot of issue, right, where people will go and they'll hang out in the vape shops and, and it becomes a late night issue. And, part of this is actually going to be also speaking, right, to Superintendent Bernhardt and seeing what, his recommendations are. But they were one of the ones that were having issues. They also mostly deal in cash, so there's a lot of robberies. That's a big issue that a lot of these smoke shops face. And again, I think my thought was just trying to move that more centralized and away from the neighborhood into, right, these shopping centers.
I think that makes sense, but I just think that shopping centers, they're only going to give them 5, and probably very few of them are going to be able to afford it, so.
I mean, we have the one in Bond, we have the one in the Bond Shopping Center.
But that already exists. You're saying
I'm
we
ju-
have one there?
I'm just
Oh.
saying, they got the rent, they're making whatever they need to make, I guess,
We're in Bond Shopping Center.
right under that roofing sign.
Oh, I don't call that Bond Shopping Center. That to me is separate. Okay.
Wait,
Well-
maybe I'm not thinking of the right.
Across from Severa's Deli.
Oh, yeah, I don't think of that as, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I see what you, okay.
That's
I
all,
thought
it's
you
all
meant-
C2 to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Or I know there was interest for the one in the, the Penn Pines neighborhood, that little corner market there. There was one I have a list of all of them I can share with you, so you guys can write independently.
Yeah, I'd
See.
be interested to see
But I
that.
have a list of all the smoke shops. But again, that's just covering the smoke shops. That's kind of half the battle with this ordinance. The rest of the ordinance, well, another decent section of the ordinance is really discussing, right, how we're changing that definition of what is a smoke shop. I don't know if we should move on to that or
Because
discuss maybe C4 and how we feel about the removal from there.
well, right, so let's stay, I want to stay on that just for another second. And I kind of see that we have three things. We have the issue of defining them,
Mhm.
shaping up the definition of what really counts as a smoke shop.
Right.
And that would include being able to prove the definition by some sort of measure, which you've got drawings for. So that's the definition issue. Then we have the issue of where they can go by zone.
Right.
And then we have the third, where they can go by proximity.
Right. And a fourth if you want to include signage too.
And proximity meaning 1,000 feet away from each other or 500 feet away from each other, that.
Right. And I did add some stuff for that as well.
So, okay, and then you say the signs. So essentially 4 areas that need to be tightened up and worded in a way that can be moved forward.
Right.
So back on the zones then, and I understand when Steve says, if we back them into a corner too much, then they end up suing us because you've made it impossible to do business here.
Right.
So along those lines, and I know they're not the same thing, but having been in another town at one point, and we had to do some curative zoning type work and so on. When we went through some education for the planning commission back at that time, they talked about adult product stores, for example, like, yeah. So you don't want them, you can, everybody knows where you don't want them.
Mhm.
You don't want them in your neighborhood. You don't want them here, but you have to allow them by Pennsylvania law. Every municipality has to allow it somewhere. And so you end up really scoping out some out of the way place, like perhaps the brown zone of the C4. And yet, so where do we skirt the line? Like, so that's become where adult stores land, is in those places, and that has survived being sued.
Mhm.
I kind of feel like I want to push the smoke shops in the same extreme. And is that bad?
I'm not there. I don't see, personally, I think those.
Right, you don't want to push
Because-
them that far.
Yeah, I just don't see them as the same thing.
Yeah,
I don't see them as the
either.
same
Right,
nuisance as
right.
on a community as an adult, like, or, any of those places. But part of the reason we can do that in a lot of townships and counties across the state is because a lot of them has been deemed sort of quote unquote regulated uses basically across the board. And so we would essentially have to say that about, and that's why I keep kind of, and I'm probably like a broken record on this, but I keep harping on like the smoke shop / smoke parlor thing. The fact that we're kind of merging them together makes that even harder because they're really not the same. One is like you go in, you buy something, you leave. The other
Right.
one is like it's designed for people to congregate there.
Yes, that
That's
is
the
very,
intent. And
that is
so,
very different, right?
to me, is like like the fact that they're kind of combined in this definition makes this conversation a little bit harder.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, well, which aspect of this business are we talking about when we speaking about these certain regulations? Like, for example, it sort of makes sense for a smoke parlor to be open later than a smoke shop. There's no reason really for a smoke shop to be open late. Why? It's just a retail store like any other store. You buy whatever you need during the day and go about your business. You don't need to buy it at midnight or whatever the case may
Right.
be. And so those little nuances, I think, kind of make a difference. Where if it was like, I think if it was like exclusively smoking parlors or, I don't even know how many of those exist these days, but I think I would understand more sort of pushing those into sort of that region where there's a really narrow sort of customer base. Like it's not, you know what I mean? It's not affecting as many people or as many patrons, and the use is kind of designed to kind of be secluded anyway. People are going inside to smoke among their peers, but it's not really designed to be open to the public anyway, really. They always have the blacked out windows. You know what I mean? To me, in my head, that makes a little more sense to seclude to like that, what was,
The C4s.
Yeah,
That's
this,
the brown.
where the hookah bars and stuff are, was that the C4s?
Do we have any hookah bars or smoking
Or
lounges
would
now?
be,
Yeah,
We do? Okay.
yeah, we have some.
versus like a retail shop, to me is like a little different. I'm not saying we shouldn't limit them. I think we should just be kind of clear on like, in terms of defining.
Yeah, so possibly adding another definition, splitting this up.
I would like that.
Are there parlors in the downtown area?
Um, there's no, not that I can think of. There are hookah bars though. We also have to remember that's something that's right, a pretty culturally, right, a very cultural event in a lot of Middle Eastern countries and African countries too. So that's kind of like a big cultural thing. So it makes sense to have that, right, more in our downtown.
Okay, and it's my understanding.
We do have them. And that's why I would keep it as it is right now, because I mean, that makes sense. We don't want to take away a gathering place and a recreation for a lot of our residents.
So if we split them, we can leave the hookah bars in the downtown, but not the,
That is my recommendation at the moment, to remove the smoke shops, but to leave the hookah bars. And maybe if we do the smoking parlors, we can leave the smoking parlors as well.
Doesn't the parlor seem more like a hookah?
Well, in here it says, I think it includes like some of it that's not crossed out is still some of the hookah language, I think, right? Or am I reading this wrong? The crossed out is what you would take out. So.
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much, right. I'm deleting it all and then re-putting it back in with my edits. So, I mean, a lot of it is being kept. I just tried to do it in a way that would make sense, right? When they do the ordinance, they're probably going to delete it and replace it with this. But it is a lot of the same language. It's just with some small changes.
Well, do you
Smoking
really
parlors.
want the stores in the downtown area to be open late?
Preferably. Right, because you want right, a lot of safety in the downtown comes from there actually being people on the street and people there doing things, recreating and, oh, I can't hear you, Cassandra.
I'm not talking at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so where we stand is, we were talking about saying that we would allow it essentially in two, we were discussing allowing it in 2 and 4 only, which would mean shopping center and the brown manufacturing industrial type zones. So shopping center and that. Jim brought up allowing it on C3, essentially, like on 69th Street. And Steve has some concerns about the C1, some of the C1 neighborhoods, that we should allow it, like on Westchester Pike.
Right, or at least, yeah. I mean, I guess in my head, I thought the like the internal, the changed, sorry, my mic wasn't on. I guess in my head, when we were talking about this previously, I thought like sort of the focus was going to be on like the individual establishments and the sort of percentage of the retail sale. And I thought that would make a big difference. But if we are essentially,
So,
because if we're essentially taking out 2 districts that they can utilize, and mainly the one that almost all of them are in my head, I'm like, why do we even need this? Because that would essentially, maybe I shouldn't say this on the record, but that would essentially stop them from opening, essentially.
Right, but we still have to define like how to measure and all that. stuff.
Right.
well, I think there's a lot, there's a good amount of C2 areas and a good amount of land in the C4. So I don't think it's totally prohibitive. And, that's a good question for our solicitor too, when they look at it and if
Right.
they say, this will never hold up.
And then
Yeah.
like the distance, I guess, between them. So you're thinking of a shopping center, right? And we keep using Bond, but okay, let's use that one again. Or the main part of Bond, I mean. Like usually, with these kind of leases, particularly in the shopping center, there's sort of like you get use in there and you usually can't get another of that use in there, even if it's big enough to accommodate what is, it's going to be 1,000 feet now, and
Yeah.
it might not be, but let's just assume that it is big enough to accommodate more than one. Usually, if you sign a lease in a shopping center, there's almost always a clause in there that you can't have a competing use in that
Right.
shopping center. So it's gonna be one, you're not gonna have multiple in one shopping center. It's just, even if we allow it by zoning, it's just not gonna happen, I don't think.
How long, yeah, so I think the distance kind of makes me feel a little better like when you're talking about 69th Street. How long is 69th Street, say, from the Tower Theater to Marshall?
I have no idea.
Probably like Marshall. I'd probably say
4,000 feet?
about maybe, not more than that, maybe a half mile.
So 2,000, because 5,280 feet in a mile.
Yeah.
So 2,500 feet between, say, the Tower Theater and Marshall. So on that stretch, you could
Wait,
have,
I'm sorry. I said 4,000. You said it's more than that.
yeah, but
I thought you said 1,000.
Oh, no, I said 4.
You're saying close to a mile, 3/4 of a mile.
Well, isn't 1,000 about 3 blocks?
They're longer blocks.
yeah, they're long. So that would say, so just visually, from the Tower Theater down to Marshall, you could potentially have at least 3. Right? If not, well, yeah, if there's,
That's how many you got, yeah.
if, say, so,
about removing it from.
right, I'm just trying to think,
Oh, okay.
if we were to not remove it from C3, would the proximity issue help to limit? So be self-limited, because like, you're correct, when I said, oh, if I'm interested in opening a restaurant, I don't want to be flanked by smoke shops, and you said correctly, well, you can't be because there's 1,000 feet. So that's good.
There might be one.
So there might be one,
But the smoke shops, there's not a whole lot of smoke coming from it. They might not want to be, like on Eagle Road, there's a cigar parlor in Havertown. I'm talking about Havertown. And I've driven by when it's nice weather and they have these smoke events where there's like 50 people on the front lawn smoking cigars. And it's bad. But so that's not going to be an issue. But first of all, too, people still want these places. Like we have to be respectful too of people's, what they want. And if they're going to come here, and I hope nobody smokes, but if they're going to buy this stuff, then they might go buy sneakers next door or, whatever.
I'd say based off and I'd encourage you guys to watch some of the zoning hearing boards. The community seems fairly fed up.
Yeah.
But that's what they call what's the term?
NIMBY?
NIMBY.
No, that's not.
no, I don't,
What I mean when you have
I-
a captured, like it's a self-fulfilling thing, like only the people who would be against something like that would come, right? If you're
Sure.
ambivalent, you're not gonna go out to, you know what I mean? That's not necessarily represent, because again, just the natures of, they wouldn't be able to open up, the people are using them, somebody
Sure.
is. But
Well-
they couldn't last, and maybe they don't last, maybe they open up, I don't know, you guys.
Not
tell
too
me,
many have
maybe
closed, have they?
Open up and close kind of immediately. If
No.
that doesn't happen, then people are using them.
I haven't seen any closed since they've opened in Upper Darby, but I have seen the very first signs of internal regulation. And that's actually just happened at a store that I recently went to, right, to see, right, is it a smoke shop or not? And I don't remember if it was Dietz and Watson or if it was Boar's Head, but they wouldn't sell their products to them because they don't want to be associated with the smoke shop.
yeah, I think that the community being frustrated has something to do with the feel of what these stores are. Smoke shop is just plain and simple the wrong title. They're not smoke shops. There are people going in to get products that substitute for the kratom, the kratom, I don't even know how to say it. Those products are very much marijuana substitutes. They bounce on the edge of legal CBD and so on. And
It's also, yeah, they're meant to be
Right.
tobacco accessories, except you replace tobacco.
yes, there are,
That's-
there are bong-looking devices all along the front windows. It's very different than a picture of the Marlboro man, smoking a cigarette in the front window.
Yeah,
It's
that's not
bongs,
quite the
it's
same.
accessories, what?
Yeah, and it's,
Right.
and then it's also vapes.
And
That's,
it's vapes, and that's very different. And that's what I think people are just,
it doesn't look like a Wawa.
yes, it doesn't, it is a glass front with bongs from one side to the other. And that's what they don't want. They don't want that next to the pizza shop.
Or
They
next
don't
to their
want,
house.
huh?
Or next, next to
Or
their
across,
house.
the right,
across
or,
the street
because
from
some
the
of these
school.
little C1s, right across the street are houses.
Right.
So these people
Well,
are
just 'cause-
sitting on their front porches or in their side yard with their kids on the swings, like the one on State Road, and like, oh, look at that, there's like bongs over there in the front window with flashing neon lights. And I know we're going to talk about the signs, but there's,
So wouldn't there, can we do like add, and it can't be within 2,000 feet of a residential,
The house?
anything, apartment, anything residence?
That would be very limiting, the way our districts, I don't, I don't think that would hold up.
No, just for C1s. Can you do it?
It effectively, C1s are only ever one property deep on either side at most cases. I mean, that would effectively just be not allowing it in C1, which is what I'd recommend instead of
Right.
doing
So if
something
we do the
like,
residential thing,
I wouldn't recommend that.
okay.
I would just not have it if you're not gonna have it.
But see, I would much rather them be on Westchester Pike. I don't understand why that's an issue.
I think, Cassandra, I'm having some issues with the C1 because C1 is so broad. I mean, it's as, C1 covers something like Westchester Pike, which I agree. Yeah, why not let it be there? It's a 4-lane road with a strip in the middle, chock full of businesses from one side to the other, from gas stations to you name it. It's on Westchester Pike. Sure, let it be there. But C1 also governs a 6 storefront mom and pop type piece of Garrett Road
Or Vermont,
or Vermont Road or State Road, like
or
these
Township
little,
Line.
yeah, these little tiny C1s is what's got me.
You said Township Line?
Sure, Township Line.
But
Well,
when I
here-
think of the small 2-lane roads where, people are walking dogs and
But
it
there are
is
major-
across, houses across the street.
See, there are major residentials right behind it. Like, there's a lot.
That's,
Township-
which is my main point.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, you can say the same thing about Westchester.
Yeah, because Westchester Pike, because when Josh is saying the C1s, because they follow a corridor, are only one lot deep,
Generally.
because otherwise that would work, but it's the one lot deep problem.
Well, they're not even one block, they're like a third of a block, right?
They're usually one parcel deep on either side. They're meant to be in the neighborhoods along the corridors.
They're, they.
It's our
I-
low-intensity district.
Yeah, I think historically that was the place where you walked up and bought your gallon, your quart of milk. Those little, the corner store type little C1 strips. That's were the ones that's the C1 part that I'm like, yeah, let's get them rid of out of C1 so that we don't have them in the little, that's where you used to buy your quart of milk spots. But Westchester Pike makes total sense.
Right, yeah.
So we can't spot it down, right? I mean, we
No.
have to stay with the zones as we can't spot.
Yeah, and there's no overlays or anything
Right, right.
in that area.
So I end up feeling like I got to go with Steve then, and it feels like C1, if Westchester Pike is C1, I feel like C1's got to stay. But then the 1,000-foot thing then at least limits more than one showing up, but
Right now, it's 500.
Oh, 500. What does it say? Oh, this is C.
but that does allow one to pop into every little strip, though. Every little 6 storefront, 5 storefront strip can get one.
Well, they've already got them already, so it's, they're already there. Well, try it. Do what Josh's recommendation is. Get shopping centers and industrial. See how that floats.
With who?
Huh?
Yeah, I mean,
I think if we're going to do the shopping centers and industrial, I don't know if we need to up it from 500 to 1,000. If we're going to put it, because otherwise, what's the point of that?
That's
Okay.
good, that's a good point, right.
that's a good point.
Well, there's an industrial section and we're cramming them all into one section. They might just put 3 in one.
But yeah.
But that'd be okay, that's okay.
Essentially what we're asking for.
We're saying, yeah, because we're saying essentially that's where we want you to go. Go ahead, have
So-
a
so give
ball
them-
over
give them
there.
the- We'll tell them they got plenty of space there. That's why,
Right, so that's what Steve is suggesting. Okay, if we limit it to that, then don't tell them they have to be 1,000 feet apart. Let them stack up right next to each other if they want to. If there's that much business, go ahead,
They won't,
stack
but
it up.
If you allow it, they can't say you're preventing it.
Right.
This is like-
Sure.
this to me is like, this is, what's that term?
How does
Like
it
a hack-
affect the stores that are already in existence?
This does not affect any of the stores that are in existence. So Westchester Pike will be fine because there's already
There is
5 or
that.
6 smoke shops on Westchester Pike, all within about 1,000
Right,
feet
and
of
you
each
said,
other.
I asked you earlier, does it stay with the property? And you said yes, so they are.
Don't worry, there will
grandfathered.
still be smoke
So they're
shops on Westchester.
grandfathered in for the foreseeable future.
Unless they are abandoned for more than a year or the use changes.
Right. But that's all part of the person's logic for buying a property in a commercial spot that. So what do you think about that, Steve? The fact
I
that,
would say if-
that Westchester Pike is grandfathered in anyway? Or
I mean, that's where I want them personally. I would rather them on Westchester Pike. That's just me. So whether they stay there, I don't really care. But if that's where I would want them. But if, I think it seems like if the consensus is, and I agree with almost every reason that we want to take it off the city. I just think, I'm not confident the effect is gonna be what we think it is. But if, I think if we were gonna remove it from C1 and C3 was the other one, right?
Yes, C3, which is the downtown.
The downtown, and just basically leave it to shopping centers, and I don't think anyone's gonna go to that manufacturing site, but let's just say that as well.
I mean, there are,
I think the 1,000 feet is that, like I said, I think that's a hat and a half. I think it's like trying to accomplish something that's already accomplished by
Sure.
removing C1 and C3.
Right, so the proximity issue, really, we wouldn't have to change. We could let that be.
yeah,
I guess we could change, I just don't know if 1,000 feet, I just don't think it's practical.
Yeah, yeah. What's it currently, 300?
500.
500. No, 500 would, we could just leave it at 500. Okay, so I hear you're moving in the 2-4 direction. Westchester Pike is grandfathered, so those folks will stay in place anyway.
Everywhere's grandfathered, technically.
Everybody is, right, everybody is. What are you thinking about downtowns?
Well, I think that that's what makes most sense to me, but if we want to make it look like Greenwich, Connecticut, it's not going to happen, so.
I don't understand why the closing times would be different. I think that's hard to regulate. And I think that owners, I just think that owners would say, well, listen, he's open downtown until what, 10, 11? Why can't I? I'm on Westchester Pike. I think it should be uniform.
Yeah, that's actually something that's existing.
Wait, sorry, can you repeat what about the closing times?
She's saying they should all be the same. Right, versus the C3, which is open. I mean, it actually would kind of be mute, right? Because we're getting rid of the C3. So, which I think that was the only one.
Oh, that one was open later, is what you're saying?
I think, but. Right, Cassandra, to your point, I think if we made this change, it would
Right back.
it would make everything the same time because it would be really what's the time in the C2 and C4.
Right.
Now, that being said, would the requirements go away for the C1 and C3, the ones that are existing?
I don't think it would, or I certainly, if I owned one, would absolutely argue that it
Right.
doesn't. Because, how could you, I'm trying to think, how could you argue that it does? Although, in lots of zoning codes, time of operation is technically not a quote-unquote zoning requirement.
Mm.
So maybe we can, maybe there's some gray area there, but,
I get.
we would have to
I
get creative with that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Let me just go look at one thing real quick. So I
I
have
also
smoke
think
shop hours. So,
I
yeah,
also
so in,
the signage has a huge impact too. you know, 4 signs for every one of these. I mean, isn't that a bit much?
Right, and that's something that we're looking to address in the,
All right, so do you want to move on from this, the zone talk and move into signs and size?
sure, I just want to finish this comment
Go to size next and then signs?
real quick, though. The C3, right, it has to be closed from 11 PM to 10 AM. In the C1 and C2, it has to be from 10 AM, or sorry, 9 PM to 10 AM. So you get an extra 2 hours in the C3. That would be negated if we just got rid of the C3 use.
Sorry, say those times again? 11 PM to 10 AM.
Must be closed. Yes, yes.
Closed, and then for the other one was what?
9 PM to 11 AM. Or it's 10 AM, I'm sorry.
What's the, I guess this is more my, I'm gonna turn on my, sorry. What's the, I know this predates you, you didn't draft this, but do you have a sense of what the, reasoning is for opening later in the morning, like 11 AM? You said 9 PM to 11 AM? That it has,
10 AM, sorry.
oh, 10.
For everything,
I
I think
think we
everyone's,
would rather open earlier and close earlier, right? No? As opposed to opening later and staying open later.
yeah, that's not a bad comment. I have no idea. I didn't write it.
It's kind of, that seems weird.
Are
change.
we, so we weren't talking about changing it, but we're thinking maybe we should.
No, I think that's just what it is for,
Okay.
I think if we remove it from C1 and C3, all of it will be 9 PM to 10 AM, correct?
Closed.
That's more
So C4 actually is also, no, I'm sorry. Oh, there's another level here. Smoke shops must cease operations between the hours of 9 PM and 10 AM.
Unless they're on C4.
Well, however, operations of any smoke shop, smoking parlor located within 300 feet of a residential zone property must cease operations between 11 PM and 10 AM.
So if you got houses nearby, you get to stay out later?
Yeah, that
That's
doesn't make any
crazy.
sense.
Kind of backwards.
That doesn't make any sense.
No.
Also, none of them could be within 300 feet of a house. Oh, yeah, I guess they could.
Sure they could,
Yeah, they could.
especially now. In fact, I'd say most of them are.
Yeah,
No, I was thinking with the changes, but yeah, I guess, yeah, that doesn't make,
that doesn't make.
Doesn't make any sense. Maybe in the C3, it makes more sense.
well, I would argue, yeah. But if we're removing it from that,
It doesn't matter.
Let me see
I
what
mean,
the current
to me, if
C2
it's in the
says.
C4, it doesn't really matter how.
They
like,
can, I don't care how long they're open in a
But, because they're
C4.
not really near anything.
Right.
Sure.
Really residential, barely. But in C2, you know, that could be a problem because those shopping centers are near.
Right.
Yeah, that's hard to reconcile, that 11 PM, so.
And I think I think closing time is incredibly important to everyone. And to any kind of criminal element.
Right, and again, I guess I'll ask again, are we talking about, are we talking about smoke shops or smoking parlors when we're talking, because,
You say parlors should be open later because it's a place to hang out.
but that would be the one that I would be concerned with, just like a bar. That would be the one that I would be concerned with, which is interesting because it don't seem like people have problem, well, all right. So that would be the one that I would be concerned with, like, you know, criminal element and all that stuff. Just to be frank, the smoke, to me, those are just really different. And
Yeah, I don't know.
and we're kind of talking about them as if they're the same, because I just don't see that same.
I thought we already decided we're
Issue.
splitting them. We're gonna split them, right?
Right, but we're talking about, when we were talking about the times, and there was a,
I think,
like a weird discrepancy.
I think the issue is a lot of the smoking parlors also sell,
Mm,
you know, if you go to like a cigar shop, right?
right.
9 times
right.
out of 10, right, they sell the cigars and there is a lounge to smoke them in, right? I can think of a couple like that. And I think maybe that's why they're pushed together in this ordinance. And that might be a difficult thing to untangle if we had just, say, moved it right and did hookah bar / smoking parlors, which seem like the same things, except now these smoking parlors do have an element of retail. Right? Because you don't have to smoke in a cigar shop. You can just buy it and go.
Yeah, I guess you don't, for sure.
So it's a good, so maybe that is its own category.
Well, what's to prevent,
Product.
who's going to regulate whether something is called if they designate a small section as a smoking parlor? Now, do they get to stay open late? Who's going to regulate that?
So typically it's been a combination, right, for the existing smoke shops right now. Regulating how late they're open has been a combination of the police, code enforcement, and then me usually on the back end writing letters. Because I'm not here past 4:30 on most days.
Yeah, but I mean, if they decide that, 10 feet is going to be designated as a smoking parlor within their establishment, now do they get to stay open late?
Well, it would depend on
And who regulates
how
that?
we wanted to define a smoking parlor with the smoke shop.
Smoking parlor doesn't sell products, but
But some of them do.
Can, most of them do.
Go to cigar shop.
they just sell
Parlor.
cigars. If they sell other than cigars, then
Right.
they're considered a smoke shop. If they're a cigar lounge, it's-
You're saying as a potential definition.
as a potential definition, they would, if it's a cigar lounge, it also sells cigars
Hmm.
strictly.
So on the specifics of time, I mean, should we wait until we tear apart the definitions? Are we going to tear apart the definition? Or did we decide we don't need to because essentially a parlor always sells stuff anyway,
No, I think we should look at the definition for sure.
separating them?
We should at least look at it, I think. I don't know if we, I
Of the
don't know if-
parlor,
right,
of the
yeah.
of the smoking parlor?
but I think that might be skipped. I think we're still we kind of went off on a little tangent, but I think your intention was to talk about the proximity, right? Or not the proximity, the
The size and how,
size and the signage.
the vast majority of the red letters on the documents you got in front of you, that section.
Well, we have the signs, which is kind of that last section, and then we have, right, our original question, right, which is how do we really define a smoke shop, right? Let's just put the whole parlor thing out of our heads for a second.
Right.
How do we find that without us doing some sort of massive inventory count, right?
So starting where you have the red letters, 75 square feet or 5%.
Right, so that is in that definition, which again, 90% of it's the exact same that's already there. I think it's a fine definition, right? It kind of covers the gambit of everything that's traditionally in these shops, I think, pretty well. But yeah, so it's replacing where it says maintains 20% or more of its total merchandise, as tobacco, and replacing it with 75 square feet or 5% of its retail space, whichever is less, and then calculated per a new section, which is underneath. So that's really the question, right? And the determination I came to is, right, what's going to be the quickest and easiest way to be able to do this? Because this is what's going to have to happen, right, for every business permit review and for, right, every convenience store that's slowly converting their convenience store into a smoke shop. And that was to just take a measurement of the display area that they're using. The question is, how do we want to do that, right? And so what I've given you were some recommendations. So how do we want to do it, and what do we want the minimum to be? Here, the recommendation was 75 feet or 5% of the retail space. So that's really just, it can be a placeholder. So it's whatever you guys think would be appropriate.
That works.
75 square feet or 5% of the retail space. And they provide like a diagram like this at permitting?
Exactly. So they would provide a diagram like that, or I'd ask them to show me the exact display area with, width and feet. The difficulty gets to measuring kind of those, right, the vertical heights, so the stuff on the wall and shelving units. How do we want to do that, right? Do you want to do one area for all of the shelving units? Do you want to do each shelving unit individually? So it's kind of, and then are you comparing it to the entire gross square floor area, or are you comparing it to the entire display area? And those, right, are the questions that I, right, haven't really landed on yet. And
So is anybody at the state or the county or anybody given any guidance? Chamber of Commerce, like those, has anybody given us? It, I feel like, I don't know. I don't know what was the right number. I feel like I need,
there's not a lot in the way of this ordinance or anything ordinance like it.
yeah. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly that changing it from 20% of merchandise, which you can't possibly,
I tried
You-
once.
you can't enforce that, to
You said you
something
tried
as,
it?
Yeah, it was impossible. Am I counting pieces of gum or am I counting 60
Yeah.
packs of gum in one case that they get? What is,
Yeah.
it was impossible. It was totally non-realistic.
yeah, so that doesn't make sense. So moving to something that's a hard number, like square feet,
That I
or
can go in,
percent of retail space, again, that's,
go with the
result to the
measuring
square
tape and
foot.
I can do, or I can do based off of a diagram.
well,
in,
and I
an
think that's
hour.
the important part, is when they come in for their their permit,
Right,
they have to show you this, and you can measure it right then and there.
yeah.
So I think that makes sense. I just don't know what to say the number should be.
Well,
Yeah.
just
See, my
say
gut
5%.
tells me that, I don't know about the number, but in terms of how to measure it, my gut tells me to do it this way. I don't know what to call this, just the aerial way, because
2D.
that's like how we measure everything else with like the properties, in terms of like use or whatever, you know what I mean? We measure it all this way. So just in terms of ease of review, like let's say, I don't know, like you go on vacation, someone should be able to like walk in and do it without trying to figure out like, oh,
Yeah,
what's
it's her
this
right over there.
special unique way that we do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That we kind of review these things. So just from the point of view of the reviewer,
Mhm.
I think I think, LNIs or whoever, zoning board, whoever, they're used to looking at square footage of things from this sort of point of view. And so that's what my gut kind of says that.
Well, this is only an issue. If they say I'm a smoke shop, then we don't really care.
This isn't even about that. This is for the convenience
For the
stores
right, this is for the
or
convenience.
the smoke shops that are masquerading as convenience stores.
Right,
Right.
so that's the only time that. so
I've
that's-
got an aisle of chips here and some sodas. I'm a convenience store.
Right, but if
Right.
I'm coming in for permitting for a convenience store, they're gonna have to
Right.
provide this.
Provide
And
that,
you'll look
ex-
at this and you'll say, well, actually, you're a smoke shop because of, you know what I mean?
Right, because
Or
of
you're not.
your,
Right, so I think
So
it makes
this will be
sense that this is the format. Now, what number do we want to apply to the
well,
format?
but a quick question about that format. Again, should the recommendation be to do it based off of gross floor area, right? What is that box length by width and a comparison to that? Or should it be display area to display area? And then a second question, which I was trying to answer.
Wait,
and
sorry, let
maybe
me stop you. What do you mean by display area versus?
am I comparing, right, the ratio of the smoking display? So like you have 100 feet of display area. So that doesn't count the hall, that doesn't count the open spaces, it doesn't count the cash register. All right. And 50% of it is smoke shop. Is it 50 to 50 or is it 50 to this entire shop? Right. And
Oh,
that's-
I see.
That's question one. Question two, right, is how do you do the area for something like a wall of smoke products?
Right.
Is that, how do we count that, right? Because that, in a diagram like that, it would be 0, right? Because it's not 2D, or it would be a single, dimension. So that's kind of why I gave, the way I have it laid out now, and I think makes sense, but it's essentially just taking the square footage of, right, that 2D surface of height by width, and then that would just be added into it.
Well, the convenience stores, some of them, I'm told, keep a lot of the smoking vape stuff tucked away. And so they're only displaying a small amount, but the people coming in know to ask for different stuff. So they can get around it by under-counter inventory.
And that might be true, and I don't think we're gonna stop that.
No, but you can measure that too. So when you're measuring, you
Well, how
just
do
do length by width with a tape measure. That's simple. You just go by face.
No, I,
You could count packs of gum or whatever.
no, and I'm not saying that, I'm just saying for, right, if this wall, top to bottom, is filled with smoke shop products on a 2D chart, that doesn't measure anything. Is that something we want to count or ignore?
I see what you're saying.
Right, it's easy with display cases, it's easy with shelves, if, give or take, right, but it's difficult, right, with the walls. And I actually did a diagram where I should show the, if you look in your packet, where I show how we might, yeah, right, how
Yeah.
we might want to go about that.
I guess I've never seen a smoke shop. Or really, I guess I don't go in. I've never seen a convenience store that sells smoking products that only has them on the wall. And so
Oh,
for-
I wouldn't say only.
No, I know,
yeah.
but my point is that, because you're saying that would be zero, right? Because it would be, we can't measure that from this point of view. Because I think if we go with this, this might be a little bit more tricky because it's really just that on the wall, if there is something on the wall.
Right, I mean,
You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. This is what I based everything off of, because this
Yeah.
is like, this is a grocery store, right? By definition. Right, so easy to, but then what do you do with the stuff on the walls like that? Like, is this count, or is it just, right, does this, this is 8 feet in the air, 4 shelves, right? Do you count the shelves, the shelf space?
Yeah.
Or do we just
Well,
count?
do you just make an assumption that if you're telling me you're going to give up this much floor space to smoke, like you're going to give up this width times length of floor space, just assume it goes all the way to the ceiling,
Okay.
right?
So
Mm.
you're measuring the
Just because
width
that's,
by the height.
so,
Well, that's a recommendation in this.
and just
the
assume
recommendation
each
here
one
is
of these
that
areas
length, if we-
Can we prevent things from going
Yeah,
on
just
the
the
wall?
whole, you do the
Goes
whole
all the way to
unit,
the ceiling.
width by height.
I don't know.
Regardless of shelf space, just.
Like in the grocery industry, like Procter and Gamble pays shelf space. They don't count the shelves and stuff like that. They're like, we want 30 feet
Yeah, that's
by
just,
15 feet.
right, let's just get it a volume. So if they come in and say, my smoke space is going to be, floor-wise, is going to be 3 feet wide and 10 feet long, okay, it's an area of 30 feet. But let's just assume you're going up 8 feet. So it's a volume number. So it's now 30 times 8, and there's your volume, that's your smoke area.
All right, but the wall
But now we're comparing
part
volumes
cannot,
to square footage, though. Square.
What? Yeah, but as I'm saying is, volume is what a salesman cares about.
What are you calling volume?
The fact that it's three-dimensional.
Okay,
right, but the problem with that is that you can have a wall of smoke shop paraphernalia that's not where there's.
Oh, that there's no
and
counter
there's no
underneath?
count. Yeah. You
Okay,
can just
well-
have a wall of it and the counter could be somewhere else with another wall.
Will they have to show that on a drawing? Do they have to show wall displays?
I guess that's the question.
well, first of all, like one of those, it's clearly more than 5%, so there's no questions. Done.
Right.
I think the counting, the size of the smoke shop area comes into the fact where someone opens a retail store, they put smoke shop materials in their store, and that's where it becomes difficult to measure, right, Josh? So someone may just open up a retail shop next to multiple smoke shops, sell some smoke shop paraphernalia, materials, items,
Right, right.
and say they're not a smoke, they don't meet that definition.
And measure and say, yes, you are.
And that's where it gets, I think
Yeah.
that's the trickiness of it. I think that's one of the things that we struggled with the most.
But how
Well,
do
The
then
whole
you
ordinance.
Struggle with it. I mean, it's the only answer. There's no other answer. You gotta measure it.
Right, but the question is like how do we measure it?
But
Like,
if we do think of the point like, okay, if I work for
Coca-Cola and you pay.
Coca-Cola, Lay's potato chips or something, and I'm making a deal with a store owner, I'm making a deal on volume. I'm not making a deal on area. I'm making a deal on.
No, it's actually face. It's always face.
Right, but that's still, but how deep too? I mean, you want your
Well, the
chips to be
average, the
5.
average grocery is like 30 inches, but you
Yeah,
know,
so
that,
they
no,
know that, but
they know that.
They're
That's a
right,
given.
but that is part of what they're getting is I get to line product 5 deep.
Right,
As
right.
well as this high and this wide.
But the pricing is based on width and height.
Right, but as far as measuring, I mean, that's what they need, they're assuming they're not just getting, how deep they go matters.
Right.
So the volume seems to be what we've got to know.
Well, you
And
can
if
say
the
volume, I
wall-
can say face, that's the difference. I'm saying face. That's
So
where it
your,
would make it difficult for monitoring.
your initial recommendation was, this is a question, your initial recommendation was doing a combination of these two essentially?
Really all three. So it would
Oh,
be,
all
right,
three.
it would be the height and width of any display case, right? So that's just everything square footage. So it doesn't matter how deep the display case is.
Right.
That would just be considered, you'd have your square footage. If it's 3 by 4, right, it's 12. For any shelf, right, it would be, right, the length of the shelf by the width of the shelf. And then for any wall, it would be the height of the wall by the width of the materials. You take, each one of those would give you a square footage,
Right.
add those square footages up, and then we divide it by either the total square footage or the display area.
So you're essentially getting at any surface that they can put the product on.
Right. It's not a perfect volume,
And
right?
this
Because
would-
it's not 3, it's, it's not
No,
height by
if
width by
that all
length.
gets added as well, then I'm good with that.
Yeah, perfect isn't
Yeah,
required,
that's
it's just
good.
the best option possible.
So, so this would be self-reporting at the permitting stage, right?
Mhm.
And then,
Inspected to
Inspected,
when they're ready to open.
oh, okay, so, see, I thought, okay.
We,
Well, that was gonna be my question, was it inspected when they, so at that point, they have the permit though, right?
they have a use. They
Okay.
have a use that says I can open a convenience store. They can get any permits they need at that point to fill the
Right.
store with what they need. And then before they can open the doors to customers, they have to get their final inspections
Okay, and
um,
then,
from LNI. And that's after they get their final inspection, then we go in the occupancy and then they are free to,
and then you inspect to confirm what was reported, like the diagrams that was submitted. at
the
time.
diagrams. But again, the diagrams maybe then also have to consider, right, that kind of 3D dimension for the shelving units.
So you would add up all of these, all 3 of these would
Right,
count.
essentially.
That's what I have proposed right now.
You don't think that's too, okay.
So
I
think
thought you were
that's
saying
good.
we had to pick
I thought it
because
was
you
either
thought it
or.
was too, yeah.
I thought we were doing it, I thought we had to choose amongst these.
Oh, no, I
No,
mean,
we
it depends how restrictive we want to be.
Yeah, no, that's great, but then how do we know if 75 is the right number? I think
I have
this,
no idea.
this,
What,
this is
let me
good.
ask you, just a Wawa, how big is a Wawa's smoking space,
Mine's
retail
pretty small.
space?
It's very small. It's.
A Wawa
it's-
is really small.
Well, I don't
It's-
know, the one on
It's on four
Baltimore,
sides.
it's literally on, the one on the corner of Baltimore and, what's that, Oak?
It's gotten smaller though.
It's like the one with the gas station. When you walk in, it's on both wall, really the only walls that don't have refrigerators. It's on both walls and the checkout counters.
What's on the walls?
Like this, like what would be up, I mean, it's not like bongs and stuff, but what would be considered like
It will be smoked, yeah.
smoke
I thought they kept
paraphernalia?
it all where people couldn't take
I was
it.
just, I thought it was all up on their
that they
heads,
had
they
to-
reach up and grab it.
It depends how old the Wawa is. The
No,
older
it's like
Wawas
it's like
are
a-
in the circular, right, where the staff.
Yeah,
is.
those are the small ones.
Those are the
though.
older,
But
small ones. The new ones
the
are
new
up against the
ones,
wall.
yeah, it's like
Where the
entire
checkout
walls,
is.
basically.
I'm gonna have to go down there and look at that one.
But it's
Bal-
still- I don't think
right,
it's a
the-
higher-
It's a wall behind them.
It's because
right.
Steve and I live near the new Wawa.
The Baltimore. and Oak.
Basically,
I'm gonna
yeah.
go down and look at that one. Baltimore and Oak.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're,
I'm thinking
those- and they're building more of those than the small ones. They're moving
Okay.
away from the small ones. And so,
That's probably 2 to 3%. I'm gonna say off the top of my head. We should go do measures just for the heck of it, but I would say it's probably 15, 18 feet by 6 feet.
yeah, I mean, it's about that, basically.
And
Whatever
it's
that is about that.
less than 5% of the
That'd be
store.
over 75 square feet though, right? Is it either or? Or is
It's
it
whatever smaller.
It was small.
whatever smaller, so 75 square feet is your min, is your limit?
No matter what, right? Or 2%. Or, sorry, 5%.
That would work.
5%.
So that would work, right?
Is 5% too low?
Now, the picture that you just showed us.
Yeah.
I assume So you didn't measure those, just, those weren't, okay.
Actually-
Did you ever get a chance to measure any of them that has opened? Like, has that ever been?
But that was a smoke shop. That wasn't a convenience store, right? That was a smoke shop operating as a smoke shop.
No, that was a convenience store.
Well, that clearly was predominant merchandise. was
I only
smoke
showed you
shop.
one wall. And
What?
that's actually,
Oh.
that was only one wall.
Well, just tell us. That's okay.
The diagram is based off of it. This diagram here, that's based off of that store, right? They have
Oh, okay.
smoke, candy, smoke, and then that display wall and
Is
the
this-
wall there. Both of those,
Are
right?
these walls?
Smoke, and one counter of
So
candy.
that's here. No, but then they have, they have a
Groceries.
whole deli, they have groceries, they have
Oh,
full shelves,
okay.
they have a whole wall of refrigerators, and then a separate room for the state games.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I would consider that more than a smoke
Yeah,
shop.
no, my ultimate determination was it was a convenience store
Yeah.
with smoke shop, or with smoke items, but
But it probably went over, I mean, let me rephrase, under our current definition, I would definitely consider that a convenience store.
yeah.
Maybe
this
under
it would
this
be
one.
up to- They'd probably be pretty close to that 75 feet. Depends, I didn't measure the display cases.
And so what do you think is people's sentiment on the one that you're talking about? Do you think they're at the limit of what people are willing to tolerate?
This,
The one that you had the picture of?
The
and
one that this is based
one
off
that
of.
this is based on. Do you think that's kind of where people's tolerance is?
I can't speak for people, but that's where mine would be. Like, okay, this is clearly, right, this clearly has a lot of grocery. This feels like 80%, right? Then they have the three, all their cigarettes are right around here because they have to go by the cashier. All the smoke, glass,
Mhm.
wrapping, things that people use are over there. And that felt fine. Would I prefer it all in one section? Sure. But this was actually a very big store.
Right, it would
This-
have to
this
be
is a
if that.
good size. Like, they had a wall of refrigerators and a whole deli. Like, it's not it wasn't a small, and a coffee station, you know?
Well, it's a dual store, basically, is what it is. It's a combo store, and if we're doing by 5%, this looks like they're at about 18-20% smoke.
Probably, but the number right now that hit was 20%.
Right, but now we're gonna make it 5.
Right.
See, something like this, I would consider it. I didn't realize, I didn't even notice the deli part of it while I was looking at it, because I was so focused on this
Look
one.
at full pictures. I
But-
have a bunch of pictures.
Well, it's actually 2 stores in one, but there's enough smoke stuff there to make, wait, there are smoke shops that have just this smoke
That's
face.
A hell of
right?
an art choice.
I liked it.
What, the art?
Yeah, it's great.
Hey, Josh,
Yeah.
the smoke island here and the smoke wall here, there are smoke shops in Upper Darby now that are just that size practically.
Well,
And
yeah,
that- that's
this is kind of the
So
exception,
this is okay, but so this is a smoke shop within a grocery.
kind of.
Yeah.
but, Like, that's the smoke stuff, but the rest of the store.
I understand
It's
it's
really
not a
hard to
grocery,
say,
but
in
dual
terms of
business, I'm
the
just saying it's-
percentage, because,
That's why the 5% would come in handy.
Right, yeah, fine.
So nobody can open up with smoke stuff within 1,000 feet.
yeah, that one's harder to figure out. I don't really have a.
Whether it's 5% or 75 square
Yeah,
feet.
the number, because you don't, unless you have a real, I mean, you've been in a lot of them, so you kind of have a sense, I guess.
I'm
So I would
actually
have to,
not
like, you know, rely on
going
your judgment.
into, but remember, I'm not really going into convenience stores.
Oh,
I'm going into smoke shops,
right.
right? These are convenience or these are smoke shops masquerading as convenience stores that we're concerned with.
Right, right.
Right, there's only 18 smoke shops in Upper Darby legally operating,
Mm, okay.
but there's probably close to 40
And like.
convenience stores that are actually smoke shops.
Look, again, I'm just want to make sure somebody tells me what I misunderstood. The pictures you just showed us was a dual store. It was a smoke shop and a grocery in the same place.
But it's one store.
I understand that, but it's really, you can have dual stores. They have them all over the place. They have,
Right, but
Kentucky
you're just
Fried
saying what
Chicken
you
and Taco
perceive
Bell
it
in the
as,
same
what it
building.
actually
different corporation.
is a convenience store. Like legally, it's a convenience store.
I understand.
You're just saying what you were perceiving it
This,
as.
by
But
zoning
we can't go
code,
based off
it's a
that. We
convenience
got to
store.
decide like what the line is going to be to decide. It has to be one or the other, right?
well, it's a convenience store with more than 5% smoking products.
Or
So then-
75 square feet.
Right, so then I would just do the one or the other. I would just do the 5% thing, but. that's-
Obviously, I think that gives us room in case we have a big store or a little store, right? If we have a little store and the minimum 75 square feet,
It could be the
then
whole-
then it could be the whole thing.
Might as
Well,
well
the
gas
back-
station shop, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Think, yeah,
Back to this one right here. It clearly would be determined to be a smoke shop because of its 5% dedicated to smoking.
it would depend on the calculation, right? It also depends, are we looking at the full square footage of, the gross floor area? Because that's a huge area, so it
Well, it's
probably
probably
wouldn't even
20%,
be.
so it exceeds it by triple.
This would be more where you get into the 75 with a space this big, right? Is it 75 square feet? Because it's so big, it's probably not going to hit that 5%. But when you get to your smaller, convenience stores,
The picture, the story just showed me was
Uh-huh.
about 20% smoking and 80% grocery.
yeah,
So the 5%, we hit the 5%.
All right,
Sure.
but, okay, so,
Am I misunderstanding something?
no, you would under this,
Okay.
under the new one.
Anybody that's gonna have smoking stuff is gonna have more than 5%. They're gonna have 20, 30, whatever.
Well, then they would get classified as a smoke shop and have
Correct,
to go
that's
to
my
zoning.
point. So they wouldn't.
So do you think the 5% is too low,
No,
is my question? Should we bump it up to 20%, to 10%?
While keeping the 75 square feet.
Sure,
So that we can deal with small
Where'd the
spaces.
5% come from?
The attorney sent me this. I didn't love it though, so I used some pieces of it in the definition. But he essentially said 70, they were creating a new mixed use and then separating that into a smoke shop, which I think is arbitrary and unnecessary, right? Having like an in-between use, which is just more work than I think is needed, especially, for enforcement. But that's where I think they had the 75 and 2%, and I thought 2% was low. So I went 5% for the smoke shop.
to answer the second part of your question, though, I think it makes sense to do it just as the floor area of the space.
So just,
That's my thing.
hey, I have a 20, I have a 10 by 15, that 10's a little small. I have a 15 by 15 floor area, right? That's what I'm dividing against.
Right,
And
whatever
it is, right, it does favor the stricter side because we are looking at the wall height, right? If
Which
you
they're
have,
not counting in their area that they're, which is why it's stricter, right?
it is stricter. So
Right.
even if we, it is going to be stricter because we're going to get more area out of the fact that they're using the walls, but they are using the walls.
Right. So
Yeah.
so I think that makes sense, but I don't know.
75 and 5.
No, I don't, to be honest, I'm not sure where I am on that, but I just meant utilizing the floor area, like whatever percentage we land on
Not the display of the floor.
For what to measure that against,
to what to measure it against. is,
for the floor area calculation.
Is that what I have now? Yeah, the gross
Like
floor
measuring
area.
all this against the entire floor area as opposed to because then he would have to do these measurements for the entire, to
Yes,
the
you
player
have
to
to
get,
eat every individual
right,
thing.
everything
You'd
would
have
have
to
to be
measure
measured,
each
exactly.
reasonable guy. Right. Go
Not
ahead.
wrong.
That makes sense, I get that.
And actually, maybe that even evens it out because that's going to bring your percentage down. Right? If you're doing display area to display area, right, it's going to be a higher percentage. If you're doing
But-
display area to square footage, you should have a lower percentage because it's going to be a lot smaller of a number.
It should be area to area. Display area to display area. That's gonna make it easier for you.
It's relative. That's going to be more work for me
That's going to make it harder
Yeah, that's gonna be harder to enforce.
to measure
because not only am I measuring all of the square footage, right,
of the
but
smoke stuff. Then you
smoke
got to
stuff, but
measure how
also-
many dog leashes are hanging up there if they're selling
Well, you
pet
don't have to
supplies.
count the units, you're just doing the face. of the-
No, but the area of the
Right.
dog leashes.
These stores are not that big. It's not like you're doing Walmarts.
No, well, I mean, theoretically,
What?
I'm not doing Walmarts, but I mean, you could have big stores.
Are they, some of them big? I mean,
I'm
I saw
just-
that, there's that one, the grocery slash smoke shop, but
No, it's,
But I think from an enforcement, like, when you think of the stage of it, so the first thing you get is not seeing the store. The first thing you get is this.
Yes.
Right? And so to be able to like, when you go into inspection, you're inspecting against something, right? Which is this and whatever it's reported. So I think for the enforcement purposes, it makes sense to like, okay, you have the floor area, then now they're reporting the, whatever you're gonna call the combination of this calculation. You have a number, you walk in there, you measure it, you don't then, so all you have to do is make sure that this is accurate when you go in there. Otherwise, you would have to go in and measure everything first you gotta confirm that the entire, I don't know, again, I don't know what we're calling the combined measurement of this, but whatever that is what they say it is. And then also that the display stays exactly the same and doesn't change at all, because literally it would have to stay the same if we're measuring the area of the end of, like, the groceries, the refrigerator, the
Right,
deli,
if-
all
if-
that, like,
right.
that could
But
not
if
change.
somebody, and
Exactly.
the way I see it playing out is somebody complains, right? They make a complaint saying, hey, this used to be a grocery store. They're only selling smoke shop items. I should be able to go in and say, yeah, this isn't the
I
same.
think the way to
And
do
then
that
do
is
it, and then do a new measurement, yeah.
Yeah, so if you take the area of the floor, and again, that creates the lower number, so it's a benefit to the township, because again, we're getting the benefit of the additional, like, the wall space that's not counted in their just gross floor area. So it's actually more strict. If you do it the other way, it's less strict, because now we actually have to count that in the comparison from the smoke, the space occupied by the smoke stuff and the space occupied by everything else. If we just do the floor area, we get the benefit of that. And so it actually limits what they can do, like the amount, the physical amount that they can put in there. Does that make sense?
All right, so where we are on that is, we're not so sure what the number is, but we know, we feel good on these drawings. This is the way we're going to measure. 70, we seem to be content with 75, on the hard number, the 75 square feet. Are we still thinking 5% is the right percentage number? Or we're just going to end unsure of that?
I mean, that would be easy, because if they only have 2 or 3%, it's not a smoke shop, so that's fine.
So 5%, so states 5% and 75, right, for now? Because we got to get to the signage issue. We got to move on to signage.
Sandra, we gotta,
It might be one of those things where you gotta just try it.
Yeah,
And if
I
we
don't know.
come back in a year and say, boy, we were off,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, if there's no guidance from other
5%,
communities,
right, 5% is like everything's allowed, or 5% is nothing's allowed.
right,
That might just be one of those, you try it, you get feedback, you adjust, you try it, you
Because
get
I-
feedback, you adjust.
I don't know
and-
where to-
Line if I
yeah.
said, like, I have a sense of what that would be. So
Yeah,
that's why I'm like, that's why I don't have too much input on the 5% one way or another, so.
All right,
you know.
I mean, I agree, and if we're the trailblazers on this and nobody has any experience to share with us, then we're going to have to be the trailblazer and tweak as necessary.
Yeah, I mean, the 20%, of merchandise seemed like a good idea until
Right,
you
now
tried
we're
it.
trying something else.
And then you're like, oh, you
Okay.
can't do this.
So do you want to move on to the signage?
Sure.
Please.
Josh, I think I'm gonna run out for now.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah,
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Yeah, I'll see.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, signage I put on the last page. And that's essentially two, or I guess it's three things, right? It's adding a smoke shop parlor sign, a smoke shop smoking parlor sign as a definition, right? Which doesn't exist independently. Adding a section that it's prohibited, right, in anywhere that hasn't met that special exception requirement. So, right, if you're a gas station that's, right, not considered a smoke shop, you can't hang a big sign that says I'm a smoke shop. And the last one is having the window signs, right, count as part of that total allowable square footage. Generally, in a commercial district, you're allowed to have 2 times the width of the tenant space for signs. This window signs, right, would be included. A lot of window signs I see are things like, you know, kratom, vape, CBD, hookah, you know, they kind of clutter the window. So I would make that, and I could use this for other things as well.
Is that going
Um,
to apply to existing ones as well, or just new ones?
It would be only new.
But their
Again,
sign
if
per- but
the
sign
signs come
permit
down
is
for more than-
generally applied to all stores, right?
If the sign comes down for more than a year, or maybe 6 months, and it becomes right, if it becomes compliant for that much time, then right, then we'd be fine.
But
But any sign that's up now would probably still be compliant.
yeah, because they would have to have gotten a sign permit anyway, and the window law applies
These
to them as
signs
well.
are generally smaller.
The signs were smaller.
But,
And the
but
sign
if
permits.
if it's neon and it's blaring, small means very little to someone who is living next to that.
Right, and what I'm saying, these are gonna be, right now, calculated into that total signage. So if they've already maxed out on how big their sign can be with their big sign, then they cannot put up these little window signs.
Right, but
Is
that
I
doesn't
see.
apply to all stores smoking anything.
Yep, it would
Dry
apply to all,
cleaners.
this would be in the signage, and this is something that I think it was, used to be part of the code, and then got cut during maybe the codification of the last ordinance, but it's something we should have anyway to keep the windows relatively clear.
For all stores,
This would be for all stores. This isn't necessarily,
right.
but I wanted it to be in this ordinance because it totally affects this ordinance.
Right, I understand that, but are you saying we don't have limitations on signage now for current businesses?
We do,
We do.
but the windows, we necessarily do not.
The stuff they hang in a window doesn't
Right.
count,
Oh, it doesn't count.
doesn't currently
Right now.
count.
Oh,
So we're
okay.
saying it will count.
In most municipalities, that does count. Everything is considered signage.
Yes.
It does.
Unless it's a temporary thing, like buy one, get one free sale, or, free hot dogs today, or whatever, temporary times, but, okay.
Right,
Is
so
window sign, that term, a defined term? In the code?
I don't know off the top of my head, but if it's not, it should be.
Because that would be a problem, because I read that, and on my own, I thought of 3 or 4 different types of things I've seen in the windows that I could probably argue both ways. This is a sign versus this is a flyer versus this is a,
Sorry, we do have a definition for window signs. Any sign, picture, symbol, or combination thereof designed to communicate information about an activity, business, commodity, event, sale, or service that is placed inside a window or upon the window panes and glass and is visible from the exterior of the window.
okay.
So we do have
Exceptions
that.
include, what are the exceptions? No exceptions?
there are none.
What?
No, there are no exceptions.
No exceptions.
No, that's the end of the definition.
Usually with signs, I'll say exceptions would be community event signage or, something like
There's
that.
a different section related to temporary signs.
Temporary signs, okay.
Okay, okay, so define, we've got a definition.
Okay, that's interesting. 'Cause- okay.
Would
Window
you
signs
consider those
count.
temporary?
Huh?
Are you saying like, would you consider those temporary?
Well, depend,
Like, they're not like fastened there, they're usually just hanging.
with like tape, right, or something like that?
It's usually not taped, but it's
The ones
something.
like against the window?
Yeah.
That's interesting, okay. Huh. So window signs count as signs on a building towards allowable square footage. I think that's,
This seems good. So Cassandra, this doesn't really prohibit them from putting in a window sign, but it certainly limits the number that they can put there because now all of those measurements count towards their allowable total.
Yeah. I still say, having 3 signs plus what is it, one that is freestanding, that's 4. I mean, that's a lot. It just seems like a lot.
freestanding?
But yeah, isn't there,
The A-frames, they're the A-frames out sitting on the sidewalk.
Oh, are those, okay, are those, yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if those are.
Are like the monuments
Right,
or
yeah, that's
the
what I was
tall
thinking.
signs. Those are
Okay.
freestanding. They
I was
can
gonna say
have,
C1s, if they got, I don't know how they would have those.
they can have, I think, A-frames. I mean, but nonetheless, it would be reducing. Now, the other question, and I didn't put it in here, but we could, right? It's supposed to be, right, in a commercial district, a maximum of 3 attached signs per establishment. Should we also include in here window signs are considered attached signs? Right, so not only are they held to the 3,
Oh.
but they're held to the 3 and anything they want to throw in the window? Or is that
Counts
too
as part of the
strict?
3.
Right, or is that too strict? Because right now, we're going to count it towards the total surface allowable area.
Right.
Right.
Do we also count it as a sign? So you can have your big sign, you can have a little sign.
And so it essentially allows you then one sign in your window. If the window sign counts as an attached sign.
Right.
Signed of the definition, a defined term?
I think so.
I hate those ones that stand on the ground and go really high and are kind of shaped like almost look like a bit of a sail.
Oh, and those aren't,
Oh,
those are considered attached? You mean like the
I don't
ones?
know.
We call them wall signs. Any sign except for a bus shelter advertisement attached parallel but within 12 inches of a wall or erected and confined within the limits of an outside wall of any building or the structure which is supported by the wall or the building. So would the window signs be part of a wall sign? There's 2 different definitions, so the assumption's probably not.
Yeah.
But should they be? Right, should they be held to 3 and have the windows clear? Or is this not something we want to just have it be part of the total calculation?
I think that's certainly a good starting point. Maybe it's something that we, again, see how it works. If that gets things under control well enough, then good. And if not,
Yeah.
that could be our next step.
Yeah, I think I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. I just think that the walking it back after you allow it could be problematic.
Well, this wouldn't apply to those in existence, right?
Yeah, that's,
Correct.
those
This would only
grandfathered
apply
guys
for
are
new-
grandfathered.
Oh, I see.
Grandfathered, unless they lapse into nonconformity,
Yeah.
which is something we probably want to keep a closer eye on than maybe we are doing right now. Right?
Good luck. That's hard to-
What?
That's a good luck. That's a lot of tracking.
Sure is.
All right,
Yeah.
so we've hit a lot of areas
I think
of
that's
this,
it,
from
actually.
zoning to the sizing.
The only thing we didn't touch on at all was, right, we said the 500 feet for no closer than any other, right? Leave it the same. We did not talk about C and D, which, right, they should be located no closer than 1,000 feet from any public, private, or charter school. And they should be located no closer than 1,000 feet from any township park or REC recreation zone district.
Yeah, I agree with that, that the 500 can stay within those zoning areas like we were saying, but if you're talking about a school,
Mhm.
and just so happens that C2 starts near a school, you should still have to hold to the 1,000 feet? Is that what we're saying?
That's as written
That's
right
where
now.
it's written.
Everything was 1,000 feet, so we could change it to 500. It could be whatever number you guys
I mean,
want.
okay, so Bond
But
Shopping Center,
those restrictions from schools and from parks are new. Those were not in the original code.
right, so if we take Upper Darby High School as an example,
Right.
the edge of the property at the edge of the baseball field, which is close to the old gas station,
Okay.
right? Because it would be all the way to the baseball field.
That's not 1,000. Is that 1,000
From
feet?
there to Bond that's not 1,000 feet. So that would
No
stop them
way.
from
If it
being,
is,
able-
it's just over.
that would stop them from being able to be in Bond Shopping Center, which we don't want to stop them from that, right?
Yeah, that would be counter what we're trying to accomplish, because how many of these shopping centers do we have? I mean, I'm trying to think of,
Barclay is down the street from Beverly Hills Middle School.
Is there one in Barkley, a smoke shop in Barkley?
There is,
Does the pizza shop sell stuff too? Like, did I see they had stuff in
I
their
think it
window?
does.
Huh?
I do think the one pizza shop
I
sells.
think the
some
pizza
smoke
shop has a smoke shop, like that's what I'm
I
talking.
think you're correct.
in Barclay?
In Berkeley Square, I think they have a, yeah.
I can't think of one off the top of my head. There's the one by Beverly Hills on Garrett Road.
Because you think about it, these shopping centers are, that's the point of them. They were built to be near things like that, so people can go to them. So there's probably a high chance that they're close to something like that, to like a school or,
So you think dropping it down to 500?
I don't know. Like, I didn't think about it when we were talking about moving the districts, but now that you bring it up, it actually, you're right, like, the high school is like right there.
See,
I
but
don't know if
here's-
that's 1,000 feet. I
But
don't
here's
know.
the thing about Upper Darby. Most of our schools are in residential districts because we don't have any institutional zoning.
Right,
Yeah,
so,
but still.
so that's more, wait. So what do you say? You're saying that to say,
More against, it shouldn't be in the R1 or C1. Right, because those are
right,
the
but these aren't
most.
C1.
No,
These
no, I
are-
understand.
Oh, okay.
But you were saying, right, these shopping centers are meant to be around these institutions. I'm saying these institutions are generally in residential districts
Because we don't have institution.
because we don't have an institutional zoning areas.
Right. I just mean they're meant to be around people.
Right.
Yeah,
The smaller ones, not the Bond
shopping
Shopping Center.
center.
Well, Bonds is meant to be driven to. That's why there's such a big lot. I mean, that was Mr. Bond promoted that. whole-
Yes.
Drexel line.
They moved
I'm
the
always
pond and everything.
dodging bodies when I'm driving through there. So I don't know, people walking.
I mean, we could reduce it or get rid of it
But
if it doesn't
nonetheless,
make
if we
sense.
draw a 1,000-foot line from the high school out, from the baseball field side of the high
It was-
school, we're gonna end up
Yeah,
behind at the McDonald's.
yeah, for
Do
sure.
we want to see what that looks like? I can Google Earth it and draw a line.
And maybe we shouldn't use that as the example, but that's the one that pops into my head.
Well, let's do
We draw
Beverly Hills
from
Middle
Beverly
School.
Hills Middle towards Barclay, how close do we get?
You have to go to second, it has to load.
And also, do we want to add religious institutions?
There's a lot of those.
I mean, they're on every corner.
No, that's to our advantage.
Might end up,
We said Beverly Hills Middle School?
yeah, because Bond seems like, yes, we know that's gonna come within 1,000, but Beverly Hills to Barclay?
Oh, yeah. Well, let me calculate it, but
No,
it's
that's
certainly,
700.
it's close.
I guess the macro question is like, is this, with the removal of those districts,
Well,
does
for-
this like change anything? Like,
I think it does. If we're limiting them to C2 and C4, and now we essentially cut out half of the C2s because you're too close to a school.
no, I'm saying with that change, does adding these change anything? Adding what we're talking about now, the 1,000 feet? Because assuming those changes are made, that does make that difference that you're talking about.
Okay,
Does, on top of that, adding these, does that actually change anything? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
So for reference, right, here's Beverly Hills Middle School. And that line goes, this is 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
So that line goes through pretty much the whole shopping
it's the
center,
whole shopping center.
pretty
So
much.
now you've
If you
taken
wanted
one
to,
of the few areas that we've reduced them to and say, oh, you can't go there either.
But my guess is that basically most, if not all, the shopping centers are gonna be approximately that distance from something that falls into one of those categories.
So are you allowed to word it? It has to be 1,000 feet unless? No, wait, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, we're trying to restrict them, so this is helping the restriction.
Yeah, but are we gonna restrict it so much we just get sued?
Like,
Because we said you can go to a C2, but there is
but
no
you
C2.
can't actually
But
go
you
to
can't
a
actually go to a
C2.
C2 because they all have schools next to them.
Right.
So if
That
we-
we can't do.
Right, so if we said you can only be in a C2
I also don't think we should do that.
and you have to be 1,000 feet away from a school, and that essentially says, there's no place for you to go.
Well, there's less places, but there's still places. Maybe less places.
so this is Beverly Hills Middle School.
Like
Or
that
sorry, this
Penn
is
Pine
the
Shopping
high
Center,
school.
There's no school near there.
Would take you, so the whole half the shopping center is cut out, and then you'd have to have it over here. But this is actually, there's gonna be a park over here, so I don't know if that works either. So 500 feet maybe?
Okay.
So use the high school. Where's 500 feet get us? And you're going from the baseball field, right?
I'm going from the very edge of the high school.
Oh, from the building itself?
No, you can't, because
The school property is the baseball
is that school
field.
property, the baseball field?
Yeah. So I think
You
you've
get to the,
got-
you get about to the tennis court.
Maybe it's not, I don't know, maybe.
So 500
schools
feet.
don't actually own them, I don't know.
They do.
Oh,
They own
okay.
that.
Who would own it?
The tennis court.
But who would own it if we didn't own
It could
it?
be the township, it could be privately, yeah, I don't know.
Right, so it's from school district property, not from the actual building.
If that's how we want, if we could interpret that way, I could,
Well, that's how
Sure.
most zoning works, right? It's edge of property, not the front door.
Right.
Yeah. Because there's school activity happening on that baseball field.
so right, this is 500 feet. Right, one way.
Where does the line start? Okay. So that's 500 gets us past, like, just behind McDonald's?
Yeah, just about.
So you couldn't go there.
So you can't go in like where T-Mobile is. You can't use that little strip mall, but you can be over there like where Petco is.
So you want to do it from the corner of the property?
Yeah, because then say, like, go over to where CVS is.
Nope.
So that guy who's well, he's gonna be grandfathered.
He's gonna be grandfathered in.
If he weren't there, he couldn't go there in the future.
Exactly, he wouldn't meet that 500. He's too
Yeah,
close to the
because
school.
back
But that being
there's a
said,
Park right there.
a complaint I get a lot is these kids are going right from the school to
Oh,
the,
it's awful.
right to the smoke shops,
That
to
one's-
smoke,
that one's
vape and other things. That's a very common complaint that I'm getting.
That one's an-
Really?
Oh,
That the
it's awful.
kids are
gonna say-
going to the
Oh, yeah.
smoke shop to smoke vapes?
Well, to buy
Oh,
vapes
I
and
was
then
gonna
going.
say, this-
He's got one of
This
those
sounds like
giant
somebody that's not
signs
outside.
flapping in the breeze
Right,
and everything.
okay.
It's awful.
Okay.
It's right there, like you can't. not
So-
see it coming out of school.
I mean, that's one school. I mean, let's look, let's go on State Road, right? There's
Drexel Hill. Middle
Drexel
School,
Hill. In this
so-
case, right, there's all residential surroundings, so
Yeah,
it's
that-
kind of
that
ideal
probably would be
anyhow.
true. Well, and there's the park there too, so you couldn't.
Park, so more here, right? Park here, this park would cause trouble, right, with the other side of the shopping center.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
I forgot about the
jeez.
parks.
Um,
Yeah. Township Park, well, REC Zone District. I mean, again, this is, I guess, another thing where we can, like you said
Try
before,
500,
we'll
see what
see
works.
what
Yeah,
happens.
can we just kind of draw some circles on a map and see if we've essentially regulated them off the map?
yeah. could
Because I
do
think
that.
if we've regulated them off the map, then we gotta just, then we gotta do something different. But if we regulate them out of some, but like you say, leave the others, Penn Pines and stuff still are available, then, okay. But should we draw the circles at 500? I think we gotta do 500 though, not 1,000.
I think
Yes,
that's-
no?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's try it.
It's gonna be hard to do, so it's 500 from every boundary of the park?
Every what?
Oh, you wanted him to draw it out now?
No,
No.
no,
I
no.
Oh,
can't do it
okay, I
now.
was like, I don't.
But even if I am gonna go do it, right, is it 500 from the boundaries of the park or from a center of the park?
I think
It has to be the boundaries, because that's how they do,
That's how it works now with zoning. That's the understanding.
I've never seen it done any, how do you, because
It's a
you gotta
GIS.
stand, what's that?
You have to do it on GIS. It's the only way to do it. You put the
Oh, you
shape.
mean like for what you're, to make that thing?
Yeah, that's what you, yeah,
We're just looking at it from an approximate thing. If that's the way you can do it, then I would
Oh,
just
you just,
do it
just so
from
you
the
could do
center.
something
I
quick.
thought you meant like how to enforce it. But if we just want a
Oh,
visual,
just for
you don't have to,
visualization, yeah.
yeah, just do it
That's
from the
fine,
center.
Just to make something quick.
But
Okay.
so we wouldn't be able to enforce it that way. It would have to
You have to
be,
enforce from boundaries.
but that's a good
you get an idea.
reference point, yeah.
Yeah, but that'll give us at least a gut feel.
Right.
Yeah. So,
At 500 feet
yeah, we'll get a gut check on 500.
for all things.
Okay. So, have we hit all the elements of this?
Yeah, I think so.
We still have one more thing we want to get definitely want to get in tonight. I got to, with the bylaw, the vote on the bylaw change.
Well, even the old business too. That should be easy though.
That, oh, yeah, all right. Yes, that'll take 10 seconds.
So wait, can we just, for me, summarize some of the changes that we're thinking about for the smoke shop? Divide, possibly smoking parlor out. Keeping the way the definition is at 75 and 5%, correct?
Mhm.
Keeping the way we calculate, making sure it's gross floor area.
Mhm.
Changing 500 feet for all the radiuses. And I think everything else is the same.
Well, except, and then C1, yes, and keep, as you said, eliminate C1 and C3.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks for all your work. with
Yeah,
this.
thank you. That was so,
That was-
that was huge and gave us lots to actually,
Welcome.
Thank you.
yeah, sink into. Okay, on old business, we were going to put the minutes up on the township website to be available for anybody who might want to read those, but we need a motion of the commission to actually allow that to happen. So would someone like to make that motion?
I make the motion to publish the approved minutes to the township website.
Okay, and anybody want to second that?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have one piece of new business, which, when we wrote the bylaws, we were kind of in the midst of using Zoom and virtual planning and all that, virtual attendance and so on. But at that time, nonetheless, the bylaws came together saying that the quorum is only made up of those people who are physically present. So currently Cassandra is not counting towards the quorum. The proposal is to amend the bylaws such that we would still stay with a quorum of 3, but that 2 of those people need to be physically present. The third can be virtually present.
Got it.
Is anybody have any questions or discussion about making that change? I think it needs did I give it enough clarification?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's great. I'm
all
all
right.
for it.
You'll make a motion?
Yes.
And second, Cassandra, you want a second since you're up there in the box? Oh, wait, you can't because you
I
never,
second, yeah.
you can second it next time. Steve will second it.
Second.
And all in favor, the 3 of us have to vote?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. You can vote next time, Cassandra.
Thank you, guys.
To be clear, that would be only if we have enough for a quorum based on the way, right?
Yes, the quorum, to get a quorum, we have to have 3, 2 of which have to physically be present in the room.
Yeah.
1 may come in.
We didn't do,
Oh, wait, Scott has it.
this might be a Sunshine Act.
Yeah. But we'd still be having the meeting, sunshine-wise.
Can he come up to the mic?
Yeah, Scott, we'll just consider it public comment.
Hi, I'm Scott Alberts, Director of Administrative Services, not a solicitor, not anything like that, but I do work with the boards and commissions and committees here at the township. And I think the distinction Josh was looking for was whether this is compliant with the Sunshine Act. And my advice would simply be to take this to the township solicitor for advice, because with other bodies, we do need an in-person quorum since the lifting of Governor Wolf's emergency orders. I guess the example he raised was one of our advisory committees. And so the difference between their advisory committees is that they're just sort of, they're not doing official actions in the way that a quasi judicial body like the zoning hearing board or a planning commission or, you know, one of those kinds of bodies that there's a line here. Again, I'm not a solicitor, so I'm not the person who could actually.
Basically not following what you're saying.
So
Just
the
that we
Sunshine
should-
Act requires that you need, to deliberate in public, you need to have your rules of quorum, you need to have an in-person quorum, is my understanding,
Okay.
based on what the advice that our solicitor gave us for other bodies. I don't know if that advice would apply to this body. I would just recommend that you go to the solicitor and get an advice, to just make sure that whatever changes you're making are compliant with the Sunshine Act and with any other rules that may govern planning commission. So what I would recommend just is that whatever decision you've just made or have come to, make it conditional upon approval from the solicitor.
Yeah, I think is everybody in
You might
agreement
need
that
another
it's
motion to do that.
the
just to-
the same motion, but conditioned upon solicitor
Well,
agreement?
we would have to make another
Yeah.
motion to amend the previous
previous
motion
one.
with that change.
Right. Jim made it, Steve seconded, we all voted.
So I would make a motion to amend the previously approved motion to add the condition of solicitor approval for the bylaw change.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
But wouldn't that normally, once the solicitor found out what we did, wouldn't he just come back and say, you can't do that, and then we'd have to just reverse it?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay,
This
Same-
just makes
same.
sure we take the step.
okay.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank-
all. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
I motion